So I am really stoked to introduce our keynote speaker this afternoon. Bonin Bough is one of the most awarded marketing executives in his field, the host of CNBC's Cleveland Hustles, and the author of Txt Me, one of the youngest C-suite executives in a Fortune 50 company. He was Chief Growth Officer for the popular social media platform Triller. He has worked for billion-dollar CPG brands, including Mondelez and PepsiCo, and has been responsible for some of the most successful organization transformations and the rapid growth of some of the world's most loved billion-dollar brands, including Oreo, Cadbury, Gatorade, and Frito-Lay. Most recently, Bonin co-founded Group Black, an organization that has a mission to dramatically change the face of media, investment, and ownership. He's also the founder of Lockstep Ventures and Bonin Ventures, and I have no idea when this guy sleeps. But here to give us his business insights and inspiration on how to hack our way to success, please welcome to the stage, Mr. Bonin Bough.
You know, that's kind of unfair. I have to follow Sheila in core. That's very difficult. I was speaking to her backstage. The work that she's doing is amazing. I'm glad that, I believe PepsiCo was one of the founding, or part of the early partners. I'm glad to see my old alma mater is there. And I'm usually never worried about following anybody on stage, but you know, this was a hard act to follow. So anyway, we'll see what we can do. What's up, Denver? How are you? Are you good? Come on, are you good? We are here in this beautiful state, and this is the best keynote ever because they gave you guys margaritas. I don't have to do anything. I'm like, my job is done here, right? So anyway, my name is Bonin Bough, and today what I'm going to talk about is this idea of Hackonomy, and this idea of how do you create value by breaking things? How do you break your organization? How do you break your process? But most importantly, how do you break yourself so you can continue to create value over and over again? There was a little bit of my bio there, but I'll give you a little bit of background. So I spent my first 10 years creating 2 global digital agencies, one publicly traded, which is still one of the largest, one privately held. And then I left the agency world because I realized that clients were too dumb to buy good work, so I figured I'd become a dumb client. And I became the first chief digital officer of PepsiCo. Now look, nowadays they call it digital transformation, but then it was like, oh my God, what's Facebook? So that's what I walked into. And the word on the street was that there was no way these digital channels were ever going to sell product. So the very first program we did was a program called Democracy, and was the first ever user-generated beverage. And we let consumers use the Facebook platform to create everything from the messaging to choose the flavor. We actually shipped silver cans with clear liquid in it so they could taste it. We had them name the product. We had them choose the color, everything. That became the #1 limited time offer that we ever had in the history of PepsiCo, at least up until my time. And that was because we actually saw that consumers were changing and wanted to be engaged in a process, and we gave them the opportunity to do that, and it flew off the shelves. They said, okay, that's not good enough. You got to prove that you can do more. So we went over to Gatorade. Now, what everybody said about Gatorade was that, well, actually before that, what everybody said about Gatorade was that it had too much sugar, too much sugar, too much sugar. So we set up this thing called mission control. So imagine this glass room in the center of the marketing floor, which had screens that were showing consumer conversation on all different screens, and it had people engaging in consumers. And guess what we found out? They were right, it did have too much sugar. Millions of dollars spent on building this, and we got the same answer. But what we also found out was that the challenge was that the people who were complaining about it were 34, sitting on their couch. So yeah, it's got too much sugar, sorry, because it's built for 14-year-olds that wake up at 6 in the morning and do 2-a-days, not for pretend couch potatoes who want to be athletes and think that they're exercising by watching football. So we decided to create G2, which had half the sugar, half the calories, became another billion-dollar business for Gatorade. We got so good to the point that we could judge consumers. We could actually see outages in product based on complaints that were happening around the state. But we literally transformed how we approached the consumer, but more importantly, we followed the consumer changing, and we changed how we operated as a business. I left there and I went to Mondelez. Mondelez, you guys know, some of the best brands in the world, Stride, Cadbury, Wheat Thins, Oreos. And there, I became Chief Media and E-commerce Officer. My job was to buy all of our media, from TV, print to digital, about $3 billion. We were the 7th largest buyer in the world. And when I joined, and they told me, they said, look, we want a digital guy to chart the future of media. I said, okay, I don't know anything about TV, or I had never done anything. So I asked my boss, I said, hey, any advice? He goes, don't screw it up. I said, thanks, Yoda. That's really very, very insightful. But we shifted from 3% spending in digital to 32% spending in digital. We added $2 billion of top-line net revenue, and we added $300 million of bottom line. But more importantly, we shifted the mindset of the organization to move to where the consumer was. And I think that's the single biggest challenge that we have, is the consumer, us actually are also consumers, continuously moves, but organizations stay still. I was then living in China. I decided that I was going to quit, and I was going to start investing in messaging technology, and I was going to become rich. Well, on that journey, I met a guy named Rich. He owned the largest natural beauty business called Sundial. And he said, Bonin, jump back in. I said, no, I don't want to be a marketer again. I'm out of this. But he talked me into it, and I said, the only way I'll do it is if you let me turn you into a technology company. So here we had 1,600 SKUs. There was no way we were going to sell that at any retail, although we were strong at retail. I said, e-com has to be the way. They were very hesitant to go into it. We did that. 12 months later, we took that business from $200 million to $300 million, and we sold it to Unilever for a little under $1 billion. He was very happy about that, by the way. And so I left there and said, okay, with the way that we're thinking, can we apply that to other organizations, smaller businesses? And so I had a chance to work with somebody who you might know.
We have the great Bonin Bough.
See, that volume needed to be much louder, guys. If you guys didn't hear, he said the great Bonin Bough. I might play it again. Let's go back now. I love this. Oh, it's on that side, sorry. I love this photo because everybody's like, Bonin, you are so tall. And I'm like, dude, I'm literally standing and he's sitting. But he's not just sitting, he's in like a beach chair in like a full squat, like way down here, and I'm barely above it. But we had a chance to work on challenging our methods of growth, and that if we could reinvent a neighborhood. And so the idea was, could we take a neighborhood in Cleveland, and could we, a downtrodden neighborhood, and could we actually revitalize it by using methods that other people would not kind of attack it with? And so what we did was we took local entrepreneurs, and we wanted to focus on local investors, and we built storefronts. And everybody told us, don't build storefronts, but storefronts are what transform neighborhoods. And what we did was we actually took guys like a bagel company who said, you know what, I want to create a bagel store. We said, great. And this guy's story is interesting. He quit his job, he used to sleep in his car, he would wake up at 4 in the morning, make bagels, called Cleveland Bagel Company, make bagels, he would sell bagels, and then he got to a point where he was selling so many bagels fresh that he had to learn how to freeze them. So he figured out, he borrowed a friend's freezer, he was using a shared kitchen, he figured out how to make frozen bagels taste as good frozen as they did fresh. And now they want to build a bagel store, and we said, great, we love that, we want to build bagel stores too. But the frozen bagel market hasn't been attacked in forever. It's a $480 million business. We got him on the plane. We flew him to go meet with Boxed. We got him a national distribution deal. He went from selling a truckload of bagels a month to a truckload of bagels a day. Now they're a burgeoning, e-com business. They now have 3 storefronts. I was just in Cleveland 2 days ago, actually, with the Informa guys. And it's amazing to see, but what we did was we took his mindset and we shifted him out of, here's what I want to do here, and we said, but there's a place here where the consumer is moving, so how do we think different? Now, we do this across the board with companies that are part of our own portfolio. It was mentioned that I also founded a company 13 months ago, Group Black. The idea here was to shift to equitable ownership of media. 0.2% of media is black owned, 0.5% is female owned, and we wanted to figure out how do we actually allow for other groups to have a piece of the narrative and be able to shape the narrative. Today, we are $40 million after 13 months. We have $500 million in commitments. We've raised $2 billion in acquisition to just show you kind of the pace and scale. I also wrote a book. Now, what's interesting about this is that while it's called Txt Me now, originally it was called Digilance. It was supposed to be this big book, and I wanted to find a publisher who would transform publishing with me. And I found one and said, yes, Bonin, we want to transform publishing with you. I said, great, let's go transform publishing. And the book was meant to be the Freakonomics of the mobile generation. It looks at the untalked about and undiscussed impact that mobile's had on every aspect of life, from dating to religion to parenting to memory and more. And it's 120 interviews with everybody from Dick Costello, who's the owner of the Dodgers and the Warriors, to Peter Guber is the owner. Dick Costello at the time was CEO of Twitter. And when we were sitting after we finished the book with the researcher, I realized we didn't actually change publishing. All we did was write another 140-page book. And so we had this idea, what if I put my phone number on the cover of the book? This way anybody who saw the book, anybody who bought the book, or anybody who read the book could actually engage with me and I could change publishing. So I ran back to the publisher and said, guess what? Here's how we're going to transform publishing. They said, guess what? Get out. We don't want to transform publishing, you moron. We just wanted to use your LinkedIn to sell more books. So I bought the rights back to the book. Today I text with over 100,000 people. It's been the most rewarding things. I'll talk about it a little bit. But what I want to do today is if you do text me and you put in Create Together, I will send you back a free copy of the book. The only thing I ask is I'm going to be asking you one question. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Just do me a favor and respond. So this way I can see kind of where the mindset. Don't worry, the phone number will be on every single slide. You don't have to grab it now. I'm a marketer. I know how this thing works. So let's talk about change that unlocks growth. And our journey today actually begins in the 1950s. So if you were a marketer in the 1950s and I came into your office and said, look, I really want you to invest in this thing called television. You say, look, I really want you to invest in this thing called Get Out. I get kicked out a lot, as you can tell, right? I don't need your stinking television. Radio works perfectly well for me. But three bold brands, P&G, Unilever, and Kraft, decided to jump in because what they saw was that consumer consumption began to eclipse where investment was. But in order to accomplish that, they had to change their mindset. And I'm just going to show you an example, and this is not a suggestion that you should leverage this technology, but I'm going to show you an example. I believe the same exact thing exists today. The most amount of human attention today is spent in text messaging, but less than 1% of spending actually goes into reaching people via text. I'll tell you a personal story that I have with a friend who owned a restaurant during COVID. I sat with him and I said, look, dude, do yourself a favor. Every single person who comes during the summertime that we're now allowed to be outside and eat, get their phone number. Trust me, you will thank me. At the end of that, during that winter, he was able to keep his store full because he was able to actually communicate on a channel that was kind of clear of a lot of marketing messages, but also was a personal. If I give you my phone number, it means I actually want to hear from you. But regardless of what I say, boardrooms look something like this, where there's somebody in the front that says, you know what, I think we need a mobile strategy. And then somebody looks up from their phone very distracted and says, I'm sorry, but did you say something? But what I love is this is not an example of boardrooms, it's an example of society at large. We have become the most distracted society in human history, but people will never admit they're distracted. That's what I love about humans. They'll say, no, I'm not distracted, I'm multitasking. Talk to me while I'm texting because I'm a multitasker. But what they are is they are liars. There was a study that was done by the American Psychiatric Association. They took two groups. They asked one to perform a task and multitask, and they asked the second group to perform a task and smoke marijuana. There was a 10-point drop in those that tried to use their mobile phones, text, and perform the task, which was twice as much as those that smoked marijuana. So if you take anything away from me today, it's that you're better off being a pothead than pretending that you can multitask. Just letting you know. I know what group some of you are in. So, but no matter what I say, right, there we go. Always one or five. Or most of the crowd. No, okay, so actually when Sheila was up here, she was like, smoking bones. I was like, wait a second, what is this reference to? I'm like, oh, it's a restaurant. Okay, I was like, okay, well, it's going to be a good night. Okay, so we did some more research. Turned out there's 7 billion people on Earth. 5.1 billion own a cell phone and text, but only 4.2 billion people own a toothbrush. Which means, right, two things. One, if toothbrushes are at scale, clearly this thing is working. But the other thing, 1 billion people didn't get the text message on the importance of hygiene. Like that one went right over their head. But we did some more research because people want to know about a younger consumer, so it turns out they're doing a little bit better. 96% of Gen Z own a phone and text, 93% own a toothbrush, but only 90% own deodorant. So as we come back into IRL, people, be careful. 10% of entire generation smells. I would be very, very careful. Where you go? I love this. It says, honk if you love Jesus, but text while driving if you want to meet him. Even our religious institutions understand where our behavior is at, but yet we're slow to move. How many people in here have ever thought that their phone was vibrating, but when they reached in their pocket, they realized it wasn't? Raise your hand. It's not just you, it's everybody. It's actually a disease. It's called phantom vibration syndrome. And they say people who experience it have a tactile hallucination that's vaguely similar to meth addicts. So literally, it's a drug. There's somebody in a dark alley going, oh my God, please, just send me a Bitmoji. Send me an emoji, please. Just send me a text message. I'm feeding over here. I'm dying. And while we're strung out on this thing that's having traumatic impact on who we are as a society, more importantly, how we operate as consumers. So I'm going to show you some examples, and then I'm going to show you some case studies of how we took consumer changes, like what I'm going to show you, and we put those into practice to grow our business. But let's have a little bit more fun. So when we first wrote the book, the first question that we asked people was, what's the last thing you look at before you go to bed? Your partner, or your cell phone? I know, 75%. One guy was so mad, he's like, Bonin, I hate you so much. Now I have to make it a point to look at my partner before I go to bed instead of my cell phone. I said, well, you're welcome. Welcome for the dating advice. Text back, yes, I'll auto bill. How do we? So it's changed relationships. It's changed the way we date. A younger generation is not worried about rejection anymore because they've already texted with the person before they meet them. And the sad thing is, I was built on rejection, and it teaches you character, so screw this younger generation. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not gonna lie, Bumble's not, I'm married, don't worry. No, so it's also changed parenting. Just really quickly, just interact with me. What's the average age that you would give a kid a cell phone? People yell out some numbers. 13. I heard a 12. Where else? 10, 20. Glad I wasn't born to you. So who said 12? That's the right answer. That's the right answer. Look under your seat. No, just kidding. I'm not that good. But there's a gift somewhere here for you. Don't ask me where. We'll figure it out. So no, but that's what we had. 12 was the average age. But what's more interesting is that parents talk to us about the big challenges they have. It's like things that there's a collapsing of hierarchy. So think about this. I'm driving. I'm late to work. I got to drop little Johnny off. For some reason, yeah, I'm driving on the right side. I don't know if it was. Okay, yeah, fine. I'm driving. And they're like, hey, why is the sky blue? You're like, because I said so. Look, that's funny. That's not what Google has. Then they're like, look, you're like, I don't care what Bonin says, do not smoke marijuana. Like, well, that's funny because your best friend put photos of you doing bong hits on Facebook just now, because you guys are old enough to use Facebook still, and you turned out all right. So there's this collapsing of hierarchy. Or this death of rebellion. When I was young, I used to tell my parents that I was going to Little Johnny's, and as long as I got there in a reasonable time, they didn't know. But now, we literally put a GPS in their pocket. The number 2 at Facebook told me, she said, I can't wait, she's got twin daughters, until I can put a chip in the heads of my daughters so I can track them everywhere they are. I said, you're crazy, but it also explains some of your data issues. I'm just letting you know that. And then, even worse than that, is the very first thing that they see when they enter this world. So we did some more research. Turns out that 80% of newborn babies have their photo up in social within the first hour of the birth. So the first thing they see is dad there with the iPhone, or maybe the Android, depends on the economic situation. And he's like, oh, can you smile? Some people got Androids. They're like, I like the network. No, you don't. Okay, can you smile? Can you smile? No, I can't smile. I'm trying to be boring. Can we do this later? But again, consumer changes. So what we thought was that if 80% have, 20% don't. That's an opportunity. So ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Nelfie, the newborn selfie, ladies and gentlemen. No child left behind, man. We can make birth great again. Who's with me? No? Okay, boom. We've also turned pee time into me time, right? So we said, what's the worst thing you hate about your phone? He said, I hate taking it to the bathroom with me. I said, you know what I hate? I hate that you're telling me that you're taking it to the bathroom with you. I'm a perfect stranger. And I'm texting you from the stall. But impacts around how we see time, how we experience our relationships with our friends. People now lie to their friends about having to go to the bathroom just so that they can check, in this guy's case, not his Bumble, but his Instagram. So it's changing how we see the world. But with all this change, I also figured there might be big opportunities. So ladies and gentlemen, I give you charging stations and stalls. Who's with me? It's a big idea, guys. Really big idea. All right, I'm going to read you one last thing, and then we'll jump into some case studies. So, you know, when people text me, right? That's some of the stuff I get. I'm like, whoa, too soon. So when people text me, I don't know who it is. So it just comes in as a phone number, like I don't know who it is. And then people, they don't know what to say. So they say stupid stuff like, hey. So I write, hey back. At a time, I texted 100,000 people. Hi. So here's a person they wrote hi. I wrote hi back. And then this is what crazy. They go, took you long enough. For a number found on the title of a textbook, I thought I'd get a response much sooner. LOL. Got to put LOL so you know I'm being jovial. First of all, it's aggressive. And I also know what LOL, I wrote a whole book on it. You don't think I got the LOL piece right? Thank you, though. So I write back. They go, I mean, it's not a textbook, but it's a marketing book. I said, you know what? They wrote, you should get an autoresponder for this number. I said, yeah, I didn't want to get an autoresponder. It didn't seem genuine, but did you read the book? No. Wow, we're off to a good start. Then they go, I was browsing the section where the book was and curiosity kicked in. I said, well, I'm glad you're curious enough to text, but I must say it's a good book if you ever have a chance to read it. LOL. Boom. Two can play at that game. I'll give it a read over next time I'm in Barnes, which apparently still exists. I don't even know what it's about. I just thought it'd be interesting to see what happens when I text a number. I said, look, it's about mobile culture. Think Freakonomics of the mobile generation. Looks at the untalked about, undiscussed impact that mobile's had on every aspect of life, from dating to religion to memory to parenting and more. Ha, ha, ha. Right? Speak about, I don't even know who this is, by the way. I just want you to understand the irony of this. Ha, speaking of dating, definitely ruined my last relationship. I was a texter, he was a caller. We were doomed from the start. LOL. So I go, do tell me more, because now I'm real curious. Do tell me more. Actually, the book is interviews of 120 people. I decided to put my number on the cover so I could talk to people like you. Did you guys meet on a dating app? No, we were college sweethearts. So I go, so how did the phone bring on what you seem to think was the inevitable? I find that because I text so much, I had a hard time articulating myself on my feet. You can't Google the definition of a word mid-conversation to make sure you're using it correctly. You can't take too long to respond or people will perceive you as not too bright. You can't edit your words mid-conversation. My ex is a life coach, motivational speaker, soon-to-be author, Marine, and has the charisma of a politician. Communicating with him is a struggle for me. I even had panic attacks when I needed to communicate anything serious to him. So now I'm like, how do we get right back to LOL? Because this got real deep, real quick. They go, me, I'm just your average receptionist with dreams of being an entrepreneur, but no idea of how to materialize them or where to start. I write, wait, sounds like you're very perceptive and self-aware, so I'm sure you're a rock star. Maybe it was not you who had a hard time communicating. Maybe he was just so used to speaking that he didn't know how to listen. I'm sorry. Come on, that's good stuff. I just put my phone number on the cover. I'm not an expert here, man. Like, I'm trying to save lives over here on this phone thing over here. I go, what's the idea you want to start? They never wrote back. So clearly not an entrepreneur, but clearly that's not going to be in their future. But my point is that even that is changing a relationship. So a perfect stranger just built a relationship. We still communicate now. We've just gone on. With perfect strangers in a safe place, which would never have happened ever before. So consumers are being changed, and our job is to figure out in all the different aspects that they change. Food service, I spent a lot of my time working in food service. In fact, I'm sure you guys remember all the check-in apps, Gowalla, Foursquare. So with our food service partner, PepsiCo, I went and did deals exclusive with all of those guys on beverages to learn what that was going to mean to drive restaurant sales. And at first, people were like, that's not a big innovation. And it became a big innovation. All of a sudden, it is actually the precursor to what you see today on things like Waze. In fact, I'll show you an example of the deal we did with Waze to help drive, before they were bought by Google, way early days, to drive our understanding of who shopped at convenience. Consumers are changing, and how do you change your organization, but more importantly, your thought process? Because we always talk about companies as if they're these, the company can't change. Like, but it's also just humans, right? Like, I'm sure they can. And the thing that, as horrible as COVID was, the thing that I took away from it is how resilient humans are. We had to change as organizations overnight. We didn't have a choice, and we changed. So every single person in our organization is actually a change agent. Everybody's able to drive growth, to drive opportunity, new thought. We just need to create the culture and the opportunity for that to happen. So that's what Hackonomy is about. How do you create value by breaking things? Some of the best things have been created by Hack, the like button, 24 hours. Here's a company, Open Airline, that's trying to open airplane. They're trying to change airline travel. They want to be the Uber of airline travel. Now, I travel all the time, but I'm never like, oh, there's a plane 5 minutes away? Okay, great. So not every idea will work. So be prepared for some failures. Here's a guy named Stellog. He's literally hacking his own body to challenge our notion of humanity. In his arm, he's got a 3D printed ear. In that ear, he's got a Bluetooth microphone. When the phone rings in his pocket, he talks to the ear in his arm to answer the phone. Hello? 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 Can you hear me now? Hello? Hello? No, it doesn't work. That joke never lands. Anyway, but here's a guy named Hugh Hare, hacking his body for maybe a bigger reason. His story is really simple. At 17, he was considered the #1 mountain climber in the world. He was climbing with his best friend. They got caught in a blizzard. His best friend died. He lost both of his limbs, his legs. A week after coming back from the hospital with his prosthetics, his brother, realizing how much he needed to climb, encouraged him, forced him, took him, and made him climb with prosthetic limbs. As he was climbing, he chipped a toe. And then he realized he could actually climb better with that chipped toe. So he came home and he began to hack his prosthetics until he could climb better with his prosthetic limbs than even his real ones. At that time, he was a D student. But he decided, I'm going to turn disability into ability. Today, he is a doctorate at MIT and considered the world's first bionics because he's created bionic limbs that he believes he can sell for $3,000. And now, they operate just like human limbs. He can push down, they push back. He can run, he can jump. Transforming prosthetics as we know it. I saw him speak, and somebody asked him a question. They said, do you ever see a world where somebody would opt to have a prosthetic limb, a bionic limb over their prosthetic one? Over their real one. And he said, look, let me answer it this way. If you were 73 years old and your arthritic arm didn't operate like your 18-year-old one did and there were no complications, what decision would you make? And it was a hush over the crowd like this, because at that moment you realize, I might actually opt to be more computer. We might actually face what we call the singularity, the moment where there's a rupture in the fabric of human evolution, we become more computer than we actually are human. My only point is that if he could transform his self, if he could think differently about the challenges in front of him, we sure can. So we've looked around and worked on some core principles that we see that has been successful in kind of changing organizations, both big and small. First is aspirations versus allocations. It's one thing to aspire to do something. I want to be the strongest man in the world, which clearly I don't because I don't go to the gym. But that's the thing, I don't allocate enough time to the gym. So how do you make sure that you're allocating resources? Mind share usually is the first thing that you have to focus on, and then resources and time. How do you operate in real time? If you talk to anybody, I'm sure there's many military service people here, situations on the ground change, and they change quick. And your organization needs to be able to move as quick as those situations change, operate in real time. You have to become resourceful. The one thing I always heard from brand marketers, and look, I've worked at big and small, is that we don't have enough resources. Well, guess what? No matter how big the organization is or how small the organization, they say the same thing, we don't have enough resources. Nobody has enough resources. Like, how many billionaires are like, I'm good, I got enough money. No, nobody has enough. So they do. I don't. But my point is how do you become resourceful? How do you create value out of other aspects of your business? I used to we used to have startups come in all the time to Pepsi, and I said, look, I know you want a check for me, but I can't. True story, Instagram came in, they wanted a check. This was when they had 6 people working for them. I said, I can't write you a check, you're not proven, but I can put you on every single can of Brisk. Originally, it said no. Then they did it, launched Instagram. Literally launched Instagram, because all of a sudden they were in every single door across the US, and it changed the Brisk business as well. We created value out of something where others didn't necessarily see value. Operationalize for innovation. You have to create the structures and the mechanism, I'll show examples, of how you drive actual innovation, how you drive growth and change. And then create environments for change and curiosity. So you have to make it, and I'll show you that on Oreo. So really quickly, Nilla Wafers, great example. So this is an entrepreneurial brand is what we used to call it. You know why? Because they had no money, good luck, be entrepreneurial. So that's what we called it. So we took this and we said, we're just going to use digital and see if we can grow a brand. And that's what we did. We created these 5 these 5 campaigns. The one that won became known as Momisms. So this one is, the best families are like fudge, mostly sweet, but with lots of nuts. Then we realized that if you actually put the face of the consumer on it, you might do better. So here, good moms let you lick the beaters. Great moms turn them off first. Right. If you want breakfast in bed, well, you should sleep in the kitchen. Hey, Jay-Z, thanks for stocking your villa with Nilla. And I apologize because my condolences to the queen, but this was done during the birth. And it's, your kids are royal, my kids are royal pain. So I just spoke in London last week, and I had to say this. It kind of won, it kind of didn't. It was a little cringy. Anyway, sorry. But the point is, with $620,000, and I know it sounds like a big number, we'll show smaller ones soon, we were able to move a $140 million business by 9.8%. But legal always made me round down, so I always had to put 9. But they're no here, screw legal, so 9.8%. But then we took that same thinking and we said, okay, if consumers are now shifted and consuming in these other places, how do we do something that's transformational with our core investment, which is television? Can you play the next video?
A little brought to you by credit is usually it. But tonight, we have a product too important. Because tonight, it's Wheat Thins. Wheat Thins, crunch is calling. And the call is coming from inside your mouth. Get out of there. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Steven, how important could Wheat Thins be? Yeah, I used to think that way too. Until I received this actual memo from Wheat Thins. detailing for my sponsorship purposes what the role of Wheat Thins is in our lives. And let me tell you something. You think you know Wheat Thins? You. You and the cracker you wrote in on. Okay? Now listen up.
So, this goes on for 7 minutes, by the way. Hilarious. So the story here was, this is the first time ever Viacom had done a thing called clip and share. And it was, you could clip 30-second pieces and you could share them on your digital channels. And the organization didn't want to mingle the two. And I said, look, we owe it to ourselves to experiment to see what we can do. So we have a whole team sitting around doing this. This thing starts taking off. We're clipping and sharing, clipping and sharing, clipping and sharing. It was insanity, you can imagine. 2 weeks later, we start looking at the reach on digital. And it was like, these numbers can't be right. About a month and a half later, we get the total reach on television. And it turns out we were 5 times higher on digital than we were on television. Began to allow us to change the process of how we approach looking at building campaigns and also how we think about a new consumer. And so we translated that into, okay, how can we operate in real time? And ultimately, this piece of work came out. You can shoot the video, sorry.
If I had to describe my parents, my dad would be like the smart one and everything. And then my papa would be, he's a funny one.
It's just me and him. We kind of take it as, all right, this is all we got. This is our team right here, and nothing's gonna break this team up.
American families have changed.
Sometimes we get looks just from being a mixed family.
And while they may look different, they're still as wholesome as ever. And who better to say this than the beloved brand American families grew up with?
Honey Maid. Everyday wholesome snacks for every wholesome family.
This campaign was the first time an American brand had so clearly stood up for all families.
This is wholesome.
And the nation took notice.
Honey Maid featuring both interracial and gay parents in an ad for graham crackers that's been viewed more than 5 million times.
Honey Maid's hashtag, this is wholesome on fire.
But unfortunately, a lot of people didn't agree with our message. We were threatened with a boycott. We were called sinful.
Even the right-wing conservative group 1 Million Moms calling the ad a, quote, attempt to normalize sin.
But instead of backing down, we asked 2 artists to take every negative tweet, comment, and post, print them out, roll them up, and turn hate into love. And the best part was all the positive messages we received. Over 10 times as many. With over 270,000 shares on social media, this simple video earned over 250 million impressions from social and PR alone. And for the week it launched, it was the most shared commercial in the world. Perhaps a chart showing Google searches for Honey Maid over the last 10 years says it best. Honey Maid. In less than 1 month, it went from a cracker people love to a brand people love.
Right? I mean, oh, come on, it's not me. It was an amazing team. But first of all, it's like, how can a graham cracker have a point of view on culture? Like, how is that even possible? It never happened. This grew 22%. Never happened in the history of graham crackers, by the way. There's not enough s'mores in the world to make that happen. So, but what was great about that was that in real time, the team decided to pivot and launch that, and it was like a stroke, but we had built the muscle memory of how to operate in real time. And so that's the reason why we were able to do that, and we were able to move so quickly. And so one of the big things is, how do you figure out how to train yourself to be able to operate in real time? The other thing is, how do you become resourceful? So 2 brands came to me and they said, Bonin, we want to build mobile games. I said, great, I love mobile games. Let's go. Let me introduce you to some people who build mobile games for a living. They said, hush your mouth, Bonin. We don't need your help. We're going to use our agencies. I said, look, I love our agencies, but they don't build, hush. So they both sold $1 million. One got 12,000 downloads. The other one got 22,000 downloads. I was so pissed. I said, I'm going to find somebody who will work with me. We're going to do it my way. We're going to win. I'm going to spike the ball, and then I'm going to rub it in their face, because that's my management style. So I found somebody, and I said, look, we don't have a ton of cash. I said, okay, look, it's okay, because even more than that, I think we can make the game make money. So I found a company called Pickpock, game company out of New Zealand. And I told them 3 things. I said, 1, do not desecrate the Oreo, because if you do, I will hunt you down and the sheep that you lay with. 2, been to New Zealand a few times. 2, if you can get the ritual of twist like a duck in, then that's great. But the most important thing is to make the game make money. And so we sold ads inside of it. We did power-up, just like you would see in any other game. The game had 12 million downloads. It was #1 app in 10 countries. But most important, people played it for 2 minutes and 17 seconds. They literally, the game is still available, by the way. They played my game for 2 minutes and 17 seconds, like my ad. The funniest thing was they called me. They're like, somebody wants to advertise in it, but they're a competitor. I said, if they're stupid enough to advertise in my ad, like, get this money. Let's go, people. Let's get this money. Spent $175K. It's cash positive. Till this day, it throws off cash. And so how do you think, and my idea was, how do we change from buying media to creating things that we actually get paid for by the consumer that has our brand in it? And everybody told me it was impossible, it was impossible, impossible. So we won on that. And then the next one, we tried to go bigger. So a guy came up to me, I was speaking, I came off stage, he said, Bonin, I want to drop a guy out of the sky with no parachute on and no wingsuit on. Will you partner with me? He's going to land on the ground safely. That was the other piece. Will you partner with me on that? I said, yes. Bonin will partner with you on that. Then I ran back to Mondelez and said, here's what we're going to do. They said, no. Bonin will not partner on that. Took me 3.5 years, but we got it done. And the idea here was, could we create something fully branded, but that was so good that we could actually sell it? And we sold 2 hours worth of content of this guy, fully branded by Stride, and I'll come back and tell you, jumping out of the sky. So can you hit the video?
We're going to land in that net going 120 miles an hour with some of my best friends in the world. It's incredible. I can't wait to do it.
Miles an hour. Fastest in human Earth, by the way.
The most dangerous skydiving stunt ever performed from nearly 5 miles up.
What's up, guys? So you got to understand, when he jumps out, he's jumping with his brothers, and they have oxygen, right? So they're there. But the moment he signals and says, that's it, they pull the chute, and he's on his own. Now watch, he's flipping over, right? Because he can't land like this on the net. So at the very last second, he needs to turn over on his back, completely blind, or also crushed like a taco. So watch. Look how fast he's going, and watch where he lands, watch where he lands, watch where he lands, watch where he lands, watch where he lands. Is that crazy? Insanity, people. Just letting you know. I love this. This guy is sweating. He's not even jumping. That's how crazy it was. He's going to thank his wife. So he did 86 test jumps. And each one, so he would jump, he wouldn't fulfill the stunt, he would do different parts of it. And every single one.
I mean, I'm almost levitating. It's incredible.
Right. First of all, he had a rope burn down his back, even through, it was crazy, man. But so, 86 out of 86, he would test it at a certain point, he would pull the chute. Every single one, dead center, 50-50, 50-50, 50-50. The only one that matters, he was 30 feet off the center and 20 feet away from the worst death a human could ever face, and me losing my job. I said, Luke, don't screw this up for both of us, man. I need this gig. Okay, we're almost done. So operationalizing, sorry. I'm not used to calling to the video, so this is the first time I had to do that. So I'm usually on the next slide. Anyway, so a little technical information in case you needed that. So how do you operationalize for innovation, right? So when I was at PepsiCo, we kept seeing all these like smaller companies come in, whether it was Techstars, but we never had a program to figure out how to bring them into the organization in a way where we could actually be constructive and see if we could be successful with them. So I created a thing called Pep 10, which was the first kind of corporate startup venture kind of thing. moved over. It kind of failed, although we did it in 6 countries, but that's what happens when you're big. You're like, oh, it's failing here, but we'll get it right at some point. No, it was a success, but I call it a failure because it didn't accomplish exactly what I wanted to. So when we came to Mondelez, we created a thing called Mobile Futures. And the idea here was, how do we take some of these smaller players and create the future in 90 days? So first we gave it a timeline, which I think is super important. We gave it guaranteed budget, so we dedicated actual money to it. How much was each pilot going to be? How did we dedicate it? But the most important thing I learned is that you have to immerse yourself in the process of innovation. So we had every single one, and we did classes around the globe, but every single person who participated in it had to go and work for the startup for a week. And so here's a great example. Here's a woman. Early this year, Catherine Schieffer made her daily commute to Palo Alto, California offices of Waze, a startup that makes a social navigation app. From her seat at a long communal table next to Waze CEO Noam Borden, she made phone calls, reviewed mock-ups of the app, and participated in marathon brainstorming sessions. Schieffer, however, isn't an employee of Waze. She's a senior associate brand manager at Stride Gum, which is owned by Mondelez International. So, first of all, she was like, Mom, I'm on Inc., I made it. But that was one thing. But we encouraged them to be entrepreneurs, so we gave them, incentive to actually deliver on something that was different for them, to help them change their mindset. And then we sent them away to actually see what it was like to experience other environments. And every single one of them, they all came back and said the same thing. Bonin, should we go work for a startup? I said, no, should not. If 9 of our top marketers quit, I'll be fired. Like, I need this job. So, but I said, imagine applying that to resources, scale, brands, yada, yada, yada. And when we looked at the marketing plan, and I replicated this at a small business where I took our tiny little marketing team and I moved them into a larger marketing services organization so they could see how people thought every single day. We moved them into a direct-to-consumer business. We moved, So how do you replicate kind of operationalizing for innovation? The one person I should have told to quit was her, because then I think like 4 months later they sold for $1 billion, so I screwed that up. But anyway, okay. So we're going to bring it all home. Are you guys having a good time? Yeah, okay, there we go. Let's go. This is it. This is it. This is the end of the story. Now, so everybody familiar with this brand? It's called Oreo. You guys heard of it, right? Okay. So when I first got to Oreo, they said, Bonin. When I first got to Kraft, they said, Bonin, we want you to work on Oreo. I said, no, I don't want to work on Oreo. I don't own 6 to 12-year-olds, and I don't know any 6 to 12-year-olds, right? So you can own them, I think, I've heard. So I'll tell you. So my big challenge with the Oreo brand was that, and what people don't realize is that it was on the verge of becoming irrelevant. It had reached every 6 to 12-year-old possible, but it hadn't changed its communication in 50 years. You guys are all familiar with it. Oreo, Nabisco, Mom and Kid, Twist, Lick, and Dunk. Right? Well, that was great, but we had already had saturation. But the reason why it hadn't changed, because nobody ever got fired for doing another Oreo spot. So that was it. Everybody was like, I'm not going to get fired. I'm just going to do, it was the flagship. That's what we did. I walk into this meeting, our first meeting, and that's exactly what we're being shown. Another Oreo spot. But then off to the side, there were these print ads that were all white, and it had a quarter of a cookie, and it looked like it was swimming through milk, and on the bottom it said Jaws, 1965. And then it had a half a cookie that had a boot print in it. It said Moon Landing, 1968, right? And in the back of my mind, I'm like, that's kind of interesting. There's something there. A week later, I'm in London. It happened to be our 100th anniversary. Facebook just announced timeline. I called the agency and said, hey, why don't we quickly do a timeline of Oreo, 100 years, and let's take a couple of those and put them in and leave it open for consumers to fill in their own. They said, that's the worst idea ever. I said, I can fire you. Don't tell me I'm bad. So no, they said, better yet, let's do the next 100 days, let's publish something that shows culture through the eyes of an Oreo. I was like, okay, you're still fired. But anyway, so we launched this. The first one was Pride Cookie, and so it launched on a Sunday. By Monday, media had picked it up, and they were like, Oreos are gay. Tuesday morning, my phone is off the hook. They're like, what are you doing to Oreo? What are you doing? By Thursday, Zuckerberg had sent us a note saying it was the best campaign he's ever seen. It was a lot of, it started growing and having huge impact. By Friday, senior leadership was like, we knew it was great the moment we saw it. So, well, weird, strange, not what I remember. So that's what we did. For the next 100 days, we literally built something that looked like culture, but brought to you through the eyes of an Oreo. Gangnam Style, Elvis, and then we began to build the muscle memory to think different about our communications. That led to us doing this. So when the lights went out at the Super Bowl, 4 minutes later, we launched a tweet that said, you can still dunk in the dark. Tweet heard around the world. Now, I forced us to buy Super Bowl. But what the Super Bowl didn't know is I actually had a covert job, which was to pull the plug. And so I did that, boom, and it worked. There you go. So, but that led us to actually being able to transform the entire communications footprint for Oreo. Can you guys hit that video?
Wonder if I gave an Oreo to the big bad wolf, how would the story go? Would he still go huff and puff, or would he bring those pigs cool stuff to decorate the deck he helped them build? Would they not get killed? Wonder if I gave an Oreo to a vampire in a creepy show. Would he not act so undead? Would he thirst for milk instead? I've just got this feeling that it might work out alright. 'Cause cream does wondrous things inside a chocolate sandwich dream. If I gave them to great white sharks, would they share them with baby seals? Would they call up a giant squid for a friendly meal? Wonder if I gave an Oreo. Wonder if I gave an Oreo. What if I gave an Oreo to you?
So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we had a campaign that was fresh, that could target an older demographic that we can bring into snacking, but could also target a younger demographic. Cheap enough for us to execute around the globe, became our first global campaign. We could utilize music, we had a moniker, and all of a sudden we had all these different pieces that we could use, and it transformed the brand, Oreo brand, to what you see today. Even today, when you look at the pack, you'll notice it's a smile versus just a cookie on the front. And that was all driven by Wonderfilled. We then left there, and we decided, hey, could we challenge the brand even more? You guys can play the video, but I'm going to tell you when to cut it. And I'm going to talk over it. So, we said, okay, if we could showcase what an Oreo looked like visually, imagine if you could taste culture. Imagine if you could taste culture through an Oreo. And so we created the first ever 3D vending machine, 3D printed vending machine. You can turn the audio up and I'll let it go.
Goers to the trending vending lounge to participate in an experiment. What would happen if your Oreo cookie joined the social network? Our prototype vending machines take what's trending on Twitter and turns those trends into custom Oreos. Using unique transparent touchscreens, users scroll through a list of trending topics, each related to a particular flavor combination and pattern. Advanced algorithms translate the tweets into custom cookies. In all, there are about 10,000 possible combinations. Users can also mash up two trends to further customize their experience. The resulting cookie combines elements of the two original trends. Once the user hits Make Cookie, the real magic happens. Using some repurposed 3D printing technology and a pneumatic pump system, we've enabled festival attendees to watch as their custom cookie is robotically printed and assembled.
Bring people behind it, and it's like Willy Wonka. People are like, what is going on here? Like, how is this even humanly possible? And it's really difficult, it turns out, to turn bits into atoms. We literally had to figure out, we had to create a hyper snacking markup language so that you could tell, like, what does sentiment taste like? What does negativity taste? Watch this, I love this. She's like so surprised that it tasted good. It's like, we're Oreo, what did you think? Google Glass? Who's this glass hole? Why are you even here? No. But what was more interesting was people waited online for 2.5 hours so that they could customize the experience that they've known since childhood. So the head of supply chain is there. He's like, Bonin, we got to do this at scale. I said, no! Because it meant that I was going to have to take on e-commerce. And that's what we did. And we came back and we decided, okay, how do we create custom experiences that you can engage in? And that created our first ever customized product, which became the ability to customize every single aspect of the pack. You know what, just play the video. Sorry, I'm used to my own timing. Play the video. So millions of different options, and you could customize every single aspect of the pack. You could use joy, love, glow. We had to create all this from scratch. We built a factory of 70 people. When we were starting this project, we're all in a room, and there's 70 or 80 of us. And everybody is saying why it can't be done. It can't be done, there's no way, because we only had 3 months to get it done. Can't be done, sorry, we had 3 months where we had to get to the finish line or we would miss the Christmas season. I didn't want to do that. Can't be done, can't be done. The head of supply chain slammed his hand on the table. Said, anybody who doesn't believe that we can do it, leave now. Everybody left. Except for like 6 people, and one of them was like the procurement person for sugar. So it wasn't the A-team people that we were working with there. So any sugar procurement people here? Okay, all right, so, and a 27-year-old woman on my team ran the project, and literally with 7 people, and they created a factory. They created all the technology that allows you to color it. They created overwrap tech with HP that could run on our lines that had never been done before. They created the shippers and the product to ship. But what I love the most about this is that we allow people to literally put a message, and we got everything from, will you marry me, you know, to it's a boy. I'm like, don't deliver that to the wrong person. What do you mean it's a boy? I didn't even know we were trying, what? But it allowed people to take a product that they knew from childhood, customize it, and share it, the actual product, with somebody who they cared about. Total transformation of the business. But the more interesting thing was using these 5 takeaways. You know, we took what started off as a simple Facebook post. Ultimately, e-commerce would become 50% of the total growth of the next 5 years for the largest snack food company in the world. And that would be spearheaded by a custom product that was led by the work that we did on Oreo. So we took a tiny little Facebook post. Because we challenged ourselves, we broke the organization, we changed our process, we challenged our mindset, we were able to turn that into the growth engine for the largest snack food company in the world. And so that's why I'm so proud of the work that I've been able to do across my career. Ladies and gentlemen, feel free to text me. But here's the thing is that Alan Kay said the best way to predict the future is to invent it. But ladies and gentlemen, I would say the best way to predict the future is to hack it. Thank you, Denver. It's been so amazing to be here with you. I know, we got 10 minutes, sorry.
That's awesome. Bonin, thank you so much. We have time for a couple questions. I want to ask you a couple questions really quick.
Go ahead.
Bonin, I totally agree with you about the importance of mobile phones and getting the phone number for your guests. How do you get the attention of the customer, though, when they are spending hours and hours on Instagram and TikTok, and they have digital marketplaces with hundreds and thousands of brands? How do you get their attention?
Well, you know, I think it's a complex question. No, you know, look, I think it's a little different when you're talking about in that specific scenario. When you're talking about food institutions, I believe that those are so local, and people appreciate having a continual rapport. So I believe that once you're able to offer them a discount, a free drink, or whatever, and you get their phone number, because they're local and it's a relationship that you want to cultivate, it's much easier to continue to have communications with them and for them to actually respond and re-engage with you. When you're talking about a much broader aspect, like, okay, how am I going to break through amidst the chaos of communication that everybody else does? You know, look, we have a lot of business. My wife runs a baby food business, and it's called Tiny Organics. If anybody wants to buy some baby food, I get extra points. You know, we talk about this all the time because it's direct to consumer and everybody's in the market. And in that scenario, it's either make it super helpful, so it's valuable to me, make it funny, you know, so that it's shareable to me, or make it something that I've never seen before. so that it, and that's where I think people forget that creativity is the largest unlock of attention, right? There was a study that was done, a guy out of the UK, he said, this is gonna be the most boring presentation on creativity that you've ever seen. He said, because everybody will tell you, I don't want to win awards, I want to sell products. He said complete opposite, you want to win awards. And he did a study, he looked at every single person who won awards and the competitors in the category. And the thing that was different was two. One is that those that won awards, they grew faster, but the biggest thing is the elasticity of price. People are willing to pay more. So creativity is the unlock to break out, and that's the tough thing, but that's what you got to search for.
So we've been talking a lot here at Create
also
about...
doing it a lot, dude, like doing it.
Sure.
Go ahead, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, okay, fine. We've been talking a lot about innovation, of course, here at Create. We talked this morning about the metaverse. We've talked about robots, technological innovation. When we talk about digital in particular and e-commerce, which I know you talked a lot about here tonight, what's the future? What are you looking at right now as what's the next wave that's going to come and really sweep up the attention of the consumer?
I mean, well, the metaverse, it depends on how you look at the metaverse. So, funny story. So the metaverse is, it's video games today, right? So we're all at some level operating in 3D worlds where we're leaving our footprint, we're leaving our attention, we're taking our experience, and it's not it's not really a new phenomenon. The question is, how are we going to leverage it as we move forward? So I definitely think metaverse is amongst the big changes that are amongst us. I do think text messaging is still underutilized, so I definitely am a big proponent. I have 12 investments in messaging. Actually, you guys might not know PC Richards. It's a electronics brand on the East Coast, so I had spoken at an event. I came up the stage. He's like, the CMO was like, how are you going to change my business? And I was like, well, okay. Well, first of all, clean up those dirty stores, because I bought my first stereo there when I was 14. It looks exactly the same. So, I mean, somebody needs to have a real conversation here. But two, I said, I bet you every single one of your salespeople text. He's like, there's no way. I said, look, if you're a good they sell range ovens, air conditioners. I said, no matter how good of a salesperson you are, you're not going to close a range oven day of. And if I just spent 20 minutes explaining range ovens to you, I'm not going to let you walk out without even a shot. So I'm going to get your phone number. So now I'm texting. I have no intelligence. I can't even remember, to text my parents back in a good time. So we gave them a product called Superphone. And there's a platform in there that's called Never Lose Touch. And so you can put in auto responses. So it'll send back a week later, like, hey, still interested in that range, yada, yada. So they had rolled it out, and it's also got intelligence because it can look and say what words actually help drive a person to a close. So it's intelligence for texting, right? So we put it in. It's about 6 stores, and then pandemic hits. And to his credit, I didn't even know this. Because I was always frustrated that he was moving so slow, and he rolled it out to all his salespeople. He called me in July. And said, July of 2020, and said, thank you, Bonin. You saved my business. We would have been out of business. The only way we could do curbside pickup, the only way we could stay, he said, was through that platform. So I do believe that, but I think that from my standpoint, I think the restaurant industry right now and food service, food service is going through a dramatic transformation right now. And I know it seems scary, and at the same time, I'm trying to wrestle with it because it's not the world that I know. So I had maybe 6 months ago dinner with a guy who was pitching me a concept. And you guys all know these virtual stores, virtual restaurants, right? And I'm sure some of you hate them. Some of you don't know what to do with them. Some of you might not know what they are. No. Ask the guy next to you. Or somebody next to you. And I found so they've got 80 virtual concepts, but their whole thing is to help the kitchens that aren't making money in existing restaurants to give them, you can choose from these virtual and you make the menu, right? And I thought it was fascinating because if you really think about it, the biggest transformations that we've seen have been underutilized assets being reutilized. Cars, bedrooms, homes, and now kitchens. And I don't know what to take of that, but I think that the consumer doesn't know any of the difference there. And so it proved two things, that one, DoorDash and those things have changed what it means to eat, and they've given much more opportunity for consumers, and that's never going to change. Mm-hmm. But what they didn't tell you is that there's a different competitive side that you can actually fight differently by leveraging the power of those platforms, which I don't think has been unlocked yet. And I don't know what that means, And then on the food service side, I think, I think there's a real opportunity for those. Like I used to fight all the time. With our food service folks, both at Mondelez and at PepsiCo, that we should also, I know we got to open it up, we should also be, just like we're the category captains of shelf, we should be the category captains of food service. We should bring in the new products. We should introduce those things. And I think that there's a huge opportunity given where DTC is at today, because all those businesses are suffering. So that's it. Sorry.
That's great. No, it's wonderful. If you have a question for Bonin, he is going to be hanging out with us.
Well, we got 4 minutes. I can't get 2 live questions.
Oh, you
Come
can
on.
go ahead. You can
2
ask
live
for a
questions.
question.
Who's got them? I can call on people. What's up?
Anybody have a question? Right over here.
Okay. For loyalty, for food service specifically, or restaurants specifically? Look, I'm the wrong person to ask because I'm loyal to a fault. Like I just go to the same. I'm also late. I like walking in and people know who I am. They're like, oh yes, you can get a table. And get out. This is all yours. And they paid the bill. We're good. I think the piece for me with loyalty is kind of just that, which is, what are the reasons why I want to stay with you? So, I mean, for me, for pandemic, I was very focused on local. I wanted to support all the local restaurants that I humanly could, that I knew that, because I wanted to make sure they survived. And so for me, the piece on community is most important. So I think the challenge with loyalty is you got to figure out, for the majority of your consumers, what matters in their life that they're willing to continue to do business with you, right? And I look at, what was interesting about McDonald's in the Monopoly game, for example, they manufactured loyalty, right, through incentives. So that's one way. But the other piece is through experience. So most restaurants look at the end of their brand, and I used to argue about this at Pepsi as well. Our brand was much stronger than the product we create. Most restaurants look at the end of their brand as being you coming into the restaurant and then you leaving the restaurant. But I'm guaranteed that, again, top 20% of your customers make up 80% of your revenue, right, for a restaurant. What can you give to those 20% that is unique to, whether it's apple picking, whether it's, so I think people now have come out and they really want to have experiences with trusted, curated sources. And I know at scale, at like a McDonald's and a Burger King, that's probably much more difficult. But at some of the smaller concepts, I think there's a unique opportunity to provide stuff like that. It's the same exact thing that, luxury brands have created loyalty for many, many years, things that are beyond just their brand. So that's where I kind of think loyalty is at today, is what can I provide that's unique from my perspective, that's beyond the brand that I have, that provides an experience for the customers that come into my space. Hope that answers the question. Or give away hundreds. I'm sure people will come back. Right. So I just want you to know, what? Okay, so the question is how do you think about DTC when you look at the perspective of convenience versus multiple subscriptions, and then even when you look at apps, how do you look at loyalty around apps, and do they cut through clutter? So I think at the core of that is, are people going to be more loyal to DTC? Is the convenience of shopping IRL, I'm trying to be young, shopping and convenience, is that going to be more important core to the shopping experience, and what's happening in that realm, right? And then apps being the same thing. So you got all these apps that are fighting for your attention. Where's your loyalty, right? So you got to understand, I've had a bad experience with DTC. So I was the third co-founder in my wife's business. There's my wife and another woman, and I got kicked out. So. And now there's a third female who now has the co-founder title. I don't know how this happened. So I'm not the right person to ask. No. When we started the journey on that business specifically, Tiny Organics, if you guys forgot, I said to them, look, DTC, I've never seen a DTC business break. I've never seen $1 billion DTC business. It doesn't exist. You reach 100 million and you got to sell. Because scale is not acquired. It's just not a thing, right? Retail is the scale operator and outlet. I think there's a certain subset of consumers that are cool with the convenience factor of delivery or repeatability of delivery. I I think pandemic has accelerated e-commerce in a way that we never thought humanly possible, right? Or we didn't project. And I don't think those people are ever coming back. I think, though, that their retail is still one of the most important environments for any product player. Now, having said that, the other player that is probably just as important is Amazon. Now, the challenge with Amazon is everybody's like, I don't get data, I gotta pay them. Well, you don't get data because you don't try. So what I told my wife, I said, look, what you should do is every single package that goes out, guess what your brand is? A phone number. Text me, you bought it? Well, I'll give you a. So how do you figure out how to utilize Amazon and retail, I believe, because what all DTC is doing is giving you customer data. That's all they're doing, and they're trying to create repeatability around algorithms. Well, guess what? Facebook blew up, the cost is gone, so those businesses they're all struggling, dude. Any single person who I know who has a DTC business, if you're not in Amazon, you're losing. There's no question about it. So the question that we have now is, as more mature marketers who are not like these tech guys who are like, we understand retail better than you, DTC, who actually understand retail, now what we have to do is create ways to capture consumer data in a different way. And so that's what I think is the real, and it's the same exact thing I'm saying with restaurants and phone numbers. Like, you guys don't know any of your customers. Like, that's the crazy thing about this, is that we operate blind and continue to have to recruit over and over again, versus, to your question, loyalty. What are the people who I know that if I give them 20%, they're coming back 10 times, not just thinking about coming back that one time. You know, and that's the piece that we have never cracked as a offline retail, CPG, food service, restaurant community, is that how do we truly capture that customer data? And that's going to be, I think, the battle moving forward. So
that's all the
right.
time we have. Thank you so much, Bonin. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you.